More, Learn More community. We are really in for a treat today. We're going to be talking with Alex Doman from Advanced Brain Technologies. Alex is an entrepreneur, a best-selling author, a psychoacoustic music producer, TEDx speaker. He's just a beautiful human being who, with his wife, Mandy, who's also lovely, has created these extraordinary music tools in auditory neuroscience, which we use in our practice. Some of the other creators who have worked with him include Shelia Allen, who's an OT, a good friend of mine, and Nacho Arimany, a musician for the brain. So, Alex, we're so happy to have you here. For those in our community who don't know you, tell us a bit about your work.
Well, Lynn, first of all, thanks for having me. This is fantastic. I so enjoy you and all that you're doing. And a brief background, I'm third generation in a family that's been in brain development and brain performance for over 80 years now. So the work started with my grandfather, who was a rehabilitation physician, Robert Doman, MD. His son, Bob, my dad, grew up in his work. He founded the National Academy for Child Development, which has served over 30,000 clients, every domain of human brain development: neurological, sensory, motor, cognitive, language, behavioral, educational, and health. And our family has always worked on the belief that each of us have unlimited potential.
Mhm.
And our mission as a family is creating tools, processes, techniques, evaluating them, and helping individuals become the best version of themselves through these processes, really looking at the gestalt of the individual. So I grew up in this world. So it was just inevitable that I would do this work. And the path really led me to a focus on music and sound as a primary tool for shaping the brain. And so through that work in 1998, I founded Advanced Brain Technologies out of the National Association for Child Development. Through ABT, we created the listening program, as you know. In time, through that work, that led me to work with Dr. Seth Horowitz and found a company called Sleep Genius that became the #1 global health and fitness app to use auditory neuroscience to help people get good, restful sleep. And then co-founded Vital Neuro with Dr. Cameron Fallapur, which is also a tool I know that you use to bring auditory neuroscience and EEG-based neurofeedback to the world in a scalable and meaningful and impactful form. So, co-authored Healing at the Speed of Sound with Don Campbell, who wrote The Mozart Effect, who was just a dear friend and mentor, and have just been privileged to work with so many fantastic people across my career, like Sheila and Nacho that you mentioned. So, my mission is really just to help everybody become the best version of themselves using Sound of Music as the primary tool that I'm trying to bring to better the world in some way, some
Now,
small way.
this is gonna make you laugh, but it's the truth. You know that I'm writing a lot right now, and I have to re-regulate throughout the day. I teach regulation, I practice it myself. And my two primary regulating tools are Vital Neuro, which I use up to 4 times a day, and swimming. So I've already swum twice this morning. It's only 8:16. And my Vital Neuro, normally it's on my desk, but I used it with a patient at work, so it's actually in my car. So tell us, there's so much to say, but really, the topic that I want people to better understand is the relationship between entrainment, co-regulation, and attention in brain development. And you're an expert at that. Can you educate us?
Yeah, at a high level, the brain is a rhythmic organ. So it's regulating brain waves, our heart rate, our respiration, and neural or brain firing are all operating rhythmically, right?
Mhm.
So there is a synchrony and a timing mechanism to how this is happening. And when we provide organized rhythmic auditory input, the brain synchronizes to it, something called entrainment. So that is taking an external rhythm and influencing our internal rhythms in a desirable way, at least the way that we do the work. And this is measurable. This isn't just a concept. This is something well grounded in neuroscience. And as we think about, the importance of co-regulation, for example, in our kids. So our kids' nervous systems aren't yet self-regulating. They're learning how to. So they need external rhythmic anchors.
Mhm.
And those in their environment are some of the most crucial rhythmic anchors that they have because they help the child understand their environment better and are they safe to interact in it. And
Mm.
then if they feel safe, right, a calm voice, a steady musical pulse creates safety. A structured sound environment that's not unpredictable but has predictability into it and something they can log into and call home. This gives them the capacity to be at their best when we provide those opportunities. Just like the work you do in your clinic. When you are using these tools and you're using yourself to
Mhm.
co-regulate with the students that you're serving, all of that is entrainment in real life, right? In the
Mm.
moment. And if we think about attention, that attention mechanism, that's a function of time. So our ability to sustain focus, to filter out distractions, to stay on task, that requires really precise neurosynchrony, improving timing, and attention follows when we improve timing in that sense of rhythmic pulse. So I think the key idea here really is that every classroom, every work environment, every home has a sound environment. So the question is, are we setting that up for success? Is it working for us or is it working against us?
You're leading me exactly to my next question, which just came to mind. So obviously, I go into lots of schools. I consult worldwide to classrooms, and I notice the cacophony and I notice the overcrowding in the schools. And I want to hear from you. If I go into a school and I'm advising them around their sound environment, what are your top tips?
Yeah, my top tips are to first of all remove any extraneous noise we potentially can.
Okay.
Right. So to have and let me step back. The first step. So if we're speaking to an administrator, that's different than a teacher. But if I'm speaking to a teacher, first of all, awareness. Let's just pause and listen and be aware of what that class environment sounds like as we're moving through the day. So,
Mm.
awareness is step one. Once we have an awareness, maybe of these noise sources that are a form of distraction and dysregulate kids, what can we remove from that environment?
Mm.
Third, what can we create as a filter for that noise in the environment? Is there appropriate music like our sound health collection that we can play at a low level that helps to mask some of that noise and our kids can entrain to in order to perform at their best? To
Yes.
use sound as a tool to prime them before they do an activity. And a lot of our sound tools work well to do that. So, how do we get people in a ready state for the activity they're about to engage in? Matching the frequency and the tempo of what they're going to want to do with a structured audio program.
Now, in the Sound Health series, which I just recommended to a family, what is the tempo?
Well, it ranges.
Okay.
So we have music. These are 60-minute albums that are designed to, over the course of that 60 minutes, be in a certain window of tempo. So if we're wanting to calm the nervous system, right, we're wanting to down regulate, create
Mhm.
a calm, centered environment, we use slower tempos, simplified music. So music to de-stress, 30 to 60 beats per minute. Music to relax, 40 to 60 beats per minute.
Mhm.
When we're engaged in learning and focus activities, music for concentration, music for thinking, for example, music for learning are all in that 50 to 70 beat per minute range of Baroque music, which we
Mhm.
know is ideal for sustained attention and that kind of alpha beta threshold of brainwave processing. Then, if we need more activity, we need more inspiration, more engagement, we do faster tempos all the way up to music for motivation, which is 90 to 140 beats per minute. So you don't have to do the guesswork.
No.
The music title tells you how to apply it. The tempo is on the album, so you know exactly the range, and the music is precisely arranged and recorded to put you in that zone.
Okay, so now the next question. I don't know how we're going to stay under 20 minutes. This is a very important question. So in 2014, I took your very extraordinary training, and I didn't understand most of it because the science is really interesting and complicated. But this is my question. Why does fully orchestrated music in specific hertz matter for the brain?
Music in general, as we know, is incredibly therapeutic and beneficial. All forms, regardless of what we think about different musical genres.
Okay.
All genres have to that listener some benefit to them, and that's why they're engaging with it, and that's why they're choosing it. So I am genre agnostic at many
Okay.
levels,
Hmm.
but there's certain music structured in certain ways that is more beneficial. And
Hmm.
when we think of fully orchestrated music, and much of what we do in the listening program, where we use more classical arrangements, first of all, we are teaching the brain to discriminate sound, individual sounds and groups of sounds simultaneously, which improves our neural processing and timing. So, pitch discrimination to understand language and speech and noise in a natural environment. Orchestrated music helps us to better do that. We begin to pick out changes in amplitude, shifts that happen in the sound, which allow us to tune into different things and tune out from different things in our environment. And this whole time, it's teaching rhythm, synchrony. It's imprinting the frequencies onto the brain. And when I mean imprinting, when we provide sensory input to the brain learns. That's how the brain grows based on the sensory information that is presented to us in our environment.
Hmm.
Orchestrated music does that in such a beautiful way because when we have the right arrangement with a full frequency organization, all of the frequencies that we perceive through our human hearing can be activated. They can be stimulated in a very structured way. So we prime the brain, we activate the neurons that are responsible for processing these different sound frequencies, and that generalizes. So whenever we're exposed to different sounds in our environment, we can better process them and benefit from them. So there are all sorts of benefits that come here, but that frequency imprintation is really important. Learning tempo and timing and discrimination of sound is absolutely crucial to communication, to language, to learning and attention.
You know that I've written over 100 cognitive motor activities, and one of them I wrote a long time ago, around 2016, and I donated it to Morris Bell at Yale, who studies what's called the ATEC. And his tool is evidence-based, and it's not in clinical use yet. I'm going to see him in October at Cambridge, and I'm going to ask him if he's going to be able to. I think with AI now, with all the advances, I think they'll be able to make a clinical tool. Right now, it's just a research tool. And in that activity, I call it knee up. We are doing 4/4 time with these little heels, dun, but then there is a 3/4 movement where we go out, up, down, and I call it knee up, down. And it's very fascinating. Well, I mean, I'm 100% sure that if we could do motor cognition with children in schools that was coordinative, rhythmic, tempo-based, and using timing, we could improve executive function. I'm 100% positive of that. But it's very, very high level compared to where the science is now. The reason I bring this up is that your music changes the auditory pathways. And what I'm going to do in the future at Wellington Alexander is apply motor movements, my specific ones from CogniSuite, to your music. And to date, I have not done that. I use in time.
Great.
And every kid likes different things, Alex. I test it out. My children with autism, their favorite is usually Vital Neuro. And what I do is I have them so I've got a marker board and I put my phone up. So they love the images. They're so gorgeous.
Oh,
You did
good.
such a good job. I put my phone up on my marker board and I have them lay their bellies on my big round yoga ball. And then they've got the Vital Neuro on. Do you have one next to you that we could
I
show?
don't have one sitting in
Okay.
my
I'll
office.
show it in my course.
Okay.
And they are mesmerized, of course, and I often cannot get the headphones off of them. Sometimes I usually do it for 10 minutes, and sometimes they don't say more, but they indicate to me, I need more of this. So, why in specific presentations of the brain, like autism or ADHD, which we know is heterogeneous but has some commonalities, Why are the children so craving of the music like in Vital Neuro?
I think at the most basic level
Mm-hmm.
is that it feels good. And
Mm.
there's an intrinsic motivation because it's something the individual can choose. They
Mm.
understand, maybe not from a metacognition standpoint, that it is helping them regulate, but they
Mm.
feel that it's helping them regulate and it's
Mm.
good for them. So, what I've noticed, having worked with kids on the spectrum for 30 years now,
Mm-hmm.
with all sorts of auditory programs, and we find that different kids resonate to different auditory programs
Right.
and they choose what works for them. And after they get exposure, they know what they need. So we just let them be our guide.
And they ask for it. So in my office, I have all of your technologies and I
Yeah.
keep them in your big black bag,
Yeah.
and then I have it in a cupboard. And I just love my practice so much, which you visited. But I have this process where I teach children that we always have a plan in Dr. Lynn's office and we write down what we're going to do in what order, and it just helps us to stay collaborative and co-regulated. And if they run off and do something else, I'm able to say, well, I'm kind of confused, where are we in the plan? And so that's a process that Wellington does in all of its clinical sessions. But the one thing they're allowed to do before we do the plan is go into my cupboard and get the black bag.
Oh, that's cool.
Yep. They're allowed
Yeah.
to pull it out. We're not going to open it yet, but it provides them this sense of security. Okay, so oh my goodness, it's so exciting. And I just wonder, before we go, why does Vital Neuro work so well? I mean, literally, so I'm having fascinating conversations with people all around the world. And if you watch any of the other podcasts, you'll hear me say occasionally, oh my gosh, I got to take my shoes off. I've got to ground myself because I get way too excited. And then after the interview, I take my Vital Neuro and I put it on for 10 minutes. My favorite one is Drive, but there's other ones that are great too. Why does it work so fast? I mean, it takes me like from 9 to 3.
It's interesting you bring that up. And as you know, our team at Vital Neuro is continuing ongoing development. And one of the protocols today I'm just going to share with you is being used before patients enter the surgical theater.
Mm.
And so, as a method of sedation, and that sedation protocol within 11 minutes is as effective as Valium to get people prepared for surgery. So, this is being used
I
in
believe it.
eye surgery, oral surgery, plastic surgery now. And why? So, the music is specifically composed and structured to entrain the brain to a desired brainwave frequency. The headphones are doing a clinical grade EEG measurement of those brain waves in real time to know exactly where you're at. When the brain entrains to the desired goal frequency, a personalized frequency to you is played to reinforce that. And that operant conditioning model of training the brain works very effectively when we get that frequency right. So it works that fast because it's incredibly personalized. Every session,
Mm.
every moment, every second, that system is calibrating and adjusting to you. So we know that we respond to music, but Vital Neuro, the music's responding to you, and you're helping structure the composition.
So in my past life, and I don't think you know this about me, my master's degree was in sports psychology. And I worked with Olympic athletes in 1984, and my boyfriend, my long-term boyfriend in college, was a two-time Olympian. And I have thought several times, I really need to bring this to some of the sports teams that I know. I have, low-level contacts with some sport teams because I just want to ask you if you think this would work. I'm watching these players. I watch a lot of athletics. I love sports. And when they're in slumps, it's usually an issue of timing.
Mhm.
And I think that Vital Neuro could contribute, especially if it's personalized to them getting back into their own timing. What is your professional opinion about that?
We work with athletes. And in fact, our CEO, John Golden at Vital Neuro, he was one of the leaders of Exos.
Oh,
which
wow.
in the Phoenix area globally, they're one of the top athletic training facilities and methods in the world.
Mm,
So athlete performance is actually a big part of what we're doing across different sports, from individual sports to team
mm.
sports. So 100%, especially for priming.
Right.
So priming before an activity is one of the best use cases, but what's so often overlooked is recovery. Recovery
And
after a training, recovery after competition.
and sleep. So we have a friend who's currently on the USC football team, and now they're in the, is it called the Big Ten? I don't know what it's called. They're traveling 2,000 miles. And I'm going to USC in October and I'm bringing the Vital Neuro. And I'm going to say, you guys, you need these for your athletes because they don't sleep well. When you change those time zones, it's horrible for your sleep. I taught in Europe 3 times last year and I brought my Vital Neuro everywhere. It's huge. It's big. It's not huge, but it's big for a backpack. And I'm like, I am not going anywhere without this Vital Neuro.
I'm glad it's worked so well for you. That really pleases me. And the travel component, your circadian rhythm gets destroyed
Right.
as soon as you start crossing time zones. You start crossing oceans, things really fall apart.
Right.
And so this is a point that it helps you get back to your baseline of self-regulation.
So fascinating. Like you and I can never retire now because our fields got so interesting.
Well, I mean, it's kind of just waking up. Mid 90s when I got involved in the work, and it was still a debate. It was controversial that music could do anything to impact the brain.
Right.
Well, now we have music and auditory neuroscience centers at Ivy League schools.
Right. Right.
So, the
And
debate is
USC, don't
over.
leave USC out. Habib is at
Well,
USC.
well, not just the Ivy League,
I'm just teasing.
but the point is top tier.
Yeah.
And that has happened very quickly.
Right.
So I believe we are getting closer and closer, Lynn, to the time that we recognize that the right structured auditory musical input,
Hmm.
not just playing Spotify or iTunes, but the
Right.
right structured musical input, scientifically designed, is going to be as important in our life as physical movement and exercise.
Wow. Wow. Especially if we're
And we're
doing
going to see it in our lifetime.
especially if we're doing both at the same time with I know Nacho does all the time,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Uh,
in time, right, which is a rhythm-based auditory motor program. So we're
mhm.
combining specific frequencies of sound with rhythmic stimulation and movement and drumming. So we incorporate all of that into the in-time protocols, as you know. And that was the complex training you took in 2014 when we first started our conversations.
Well, I'm so grateful that you're here today. This was a delightful way to start the day. And I just wonder in closing, are there any, well, I mean, of course, we'll direct them to advanced brain technologies, but are there other maybe scientists right now that you want us to pay attention to or any other websites?
Well, that's selfishly something I want to share, which is, important to us. Of course, we want people to go to advancedbrain.com. They can try
Mhm.
the listening program. They can do a 7-day free trial. My book, although published in 2011, Healing at the Speed of Sound, it's still incredibly relevant today. That's a great resource. And I do, want people to know there is a new auditory method coming from Advanced Brain Technologies. And
Mm.
it is this year, and it's acoustical neuromodulation, which is a very particular protocol. The first protocol is for autism related auditory sensitivity. And it's a 10-day protocol, less than 30 minutes a day, 5 days of listening, 2 days of rest, 5 days of listening, protocols complete. And Dr. Jay Lucker, who's professor emeritus at Howard University, and I
Right.
just had a published study done on our field research in the International Journal of Autism and Related Disabilities. So, that being our next step in the evolution of our work, is where I'm particularly excited and focused, and inviting scientists in the field to begin to do a deeper dive on this new approach that we're taking toward auditory neuroscience.
So the big question for me is, will it work with dyslexia?
We don't know.
I know we're gonna have to study it.
Well,
We got
we'll,
to
we'll
study
have to
them.
dig in.
Yeah, we got to
We'll
study
have to dig
them.
in, and I'll share some of the background research, and I think some of those answers will come intuitively.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right. I tell people, you don't know this about me, but I talk about you in every talk I give, but usually it's about 30 a year. And
Oh,
I tell the
thank you.
story. So you won't remember this, but I remember and I'll never forget. I very much believe that we get to where we are with the help of all the people who preceded us. And so that's why I mention so many people in my talks. The story I tell of you is that in around 2014, I'd have to look at my files. I didn't know about tempo, rhythm, and timing yet. I was just starting to write my musical thinking code. And I wrote to you, and I was working with children at a school. We were doing math, and they all had diminished tempo, rhythm, and timing. And I was like, what is going on? I want to know if you remember this. So I wrote you an email and I said, Alex, I'm observing this. What's going on? And he said, oh, well, you're looking at the field of auditory neuroscience. And I said, well, what's that? And the next day, you had sent me an entire file of research studies. That is such high integrity and such generosity because I know how much time and effort it takes to get to where you are in your field. It's not just this rocket ship, it's just, you're a bricklayer and a bricklayer and a bricklayer, and eventually you have a cathedral.
Well, I do remember. And I remember when we first met on Twitter, now X,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And you never know where those conversations start. But, for those of us like you and I, Lynn, that love what we do, sharing, educating is a gift.
Mm.
So I appreciate. I didn't know that you shared our connection in your talk, so thank you for that. That means a lot. I have an incredibly deep respect for you and your work, your enthusiasm, and the depth in which you go to help kids be their best.
Well, thank you for joining us this
Yeah.
morning. I know our community is going to greatly appreciate this talk.
Thank you so much, Lynn.